dial *611 for assistance, as your cellular phone is not authorized for use at this time. Pour de l'assistance, veuillez composer étoile 611. Vous n'avez pas le...
Hello, podcast listener. Everything around you that you call life was made by people that were no smarter than you. And you can change it. You can influence it. You can build your own things that other people can use. The App Guy Podcasts, straight from your host, Paul the App Guy, sharing his app entrepreneur journey with you for your enjoyment. And now, Paul the App Guy.
So welcome to the App Guy Podcast. My name is Paul Kemp. I'm the founder of OneMob, which is an app development agency, and I've written myself about 80 apps, and some have even made it into the app stores. In this series, I'll be interviewing the top app developers from around the world. I'll be delving into their stories, listening to their success mantras, and learning about their successes and failures. So this will help you on your app development journey. We have some great app developers that are scheduled over the next several episodes. In the meantime, this episode of the App Guy Podcast, I'll be interviewing Professor Lee Barney, and Professor Barney is the author of Developing Hybrid Applications for iPhone. He was also one of the first coders to be invited into the iPhone beta way back in 2007, and he teaches at the University of Idaho. So in this upcoming interview, app developers young and old will take inspiration from his app developer journey. So let's hear my interview now, and I'll wrap this up at the end. Okay, so I'm thrilled to introduce our guest today on the App Guy Podcast. The guest is Lee Barney. Lee is a professor at Brigham Young University, Idaho, and Lee has really joined us, and we're thrilled about that because Lee is an expert, and we know that because he's written two great books that are for sale on Amazon. They are called Developing Hybrid Applications for the iPhone and Oracle Database Ajax and PHP Web Application Development. Lee has spent a long time in software. He currently teaches mobile application development, software development processes, and software engineering. I think it's been about 17 years or so, Lee, that you've been involved in software. So we're thrilled to have you on the podcast. That was just a kind of brief introduction, but perhaps you can take a minute now to tell us, about you personally. We really want to get to know you and then give us a little overview of the journey that you've had into writing on app development.
My first introduction to writing code was actually a Fortran 4 class way back in the day. They just got rid of the card reader when I took the class, and so that'll show you how dated that course was. It was kind of strange. When I first was exposed to software and coding and engineering, I didn't really enjoy it that much. It was okay, and it wasn't until I had been through a couple of C courses and a C++ course that I really started to see what it could do. And then I actually got hired at a simulation company where we simulated semiconductor fabrication sites and factories and assembly test sites. And that's when I went, this is where I want to be. And because I'd toyed with doing other things in technology. And since then I've worked in industry for quite some time, and I owned my own mobile development company. That was before the iPhone came out, and we wrote code for the Palm Pilot. And then I saw an opportunity to teach, and I've always loved teaching. Before I got into the software industry, that's what I did. I taught 7th and 8th graders and just loved it. So I jumped back into teaching, and that has allowed me to explore things that I couldn't explore when I was under some sort of a release deadline.
What success quote do you stand by? What's your mantra? And why app development? Why do you do what you do?
I like helping other people do stuff. I mean, that's what drives me. So mostly what I focus on is writing libraries and designs that I can share with other people to help them do what they do. I find that much more invigorating for me than writing an application myself. I've been there already. I've done that, and so looking for new areas to explore and expand really is what drives me. So when the first iPhone SDK came out, it was in beta, and I wanted to see what it could do. So I applied to be part of the beta, and for some reason, they picked me out of all of the people that applied. And I started to play with it then, and I saw what it could do, saw what that new form could do, and just became really thrilled by the opportunities that it presented. Also dived into the Google platform. They were kind of rushing at the time to update from a BlackBerry type system to the iPhone type system, and I've never really looked back. Like I said, I've written desktop, server, all kinds of different code, but when I hit this, it was a new frontier and an exciting thing to do, and off I went. And I saw that I could help a lot of people if I could get them to see that this is intrinsically different than writing for a desktop.
So let's really focus on, your app development journey, Lee. This is great stuff. You must have, I guess, in the early days, maybe when you were writing on the early SDK for the beta for the iPhone, that you had some tough kind of hard lessons that you had to learn. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about the challenges you've had when coding apps and how you overcome those challenges.
When I started working on the SDK, I had zero experience with Objective-C at that point. I'd written for years in C++ and Java. I'd done enterprise Java, but I had no Objective-C experience. And I'd heard rumors about how hard it was and how strange and weird it was. And so I jumped in, and the only way I can describe how to do that successfully is to jump in with both feet. If you dip your toe, you're never quite gonna get there. You just have to dive. And but what I found specifically there was a whole range of libraries that's just very rich. And that makes your life so much easier. Xcode has come a long way since then in helping us out as well. And the language isn't as weird as it seems. The same general principles apply to that language as any language. I mean, you have the same general constructs and everything else. Certainly going out and looking at examples online and looking at Apple's examples helped out. Even today, that's where I spend my time. If I haven't done something before, if I've run across something I haven't tried yet.
Remember that I guess people listening to this may be thinking about getting into app development. And what would you suggest to those people when, in your words, jumping in with both feet? Should they go straight into I guess Xcode and writing in the native language, or really should they think about some of the hybrid platforms that you talk about, the cross platforms? The one that I use is Titanium Studio by Accelerator, which allows you to write in Java. But what would you recommend to those who are thinking about getting into app development from a very early stage?
What I've tried to tell people from the beginning is that it leverage the skills that you have. So if you have JavaScript skills or you have Java skills, go ahead and start using those types of tools, like PhoneGap or the Quick Connect one that you saw in the book or Titanium. Go ahead and leverage those skills, especially if you're trying to quickly lock up a space in the market. My suggestion at that point is after you've maybe locked up that little bit of the market, or you've been busy playing in that and starting to understand how the user interface design is different in a mobile space, then maybe start considering going back and migrating those same skills into the native platforms. My opinion is you can never go wrong. You'll move from company to company probably, or you'll move from project to project, and each project will have different requirements. And there are some things that you can do readily and easily in a hybrid environment, and there are some things that are harder to do in a hybrid environment. And so I suggest, to everyone that I run into when we talk about this, that they really learn both.
Yes, a very good lesson there. And it probably is, I guess, certainly in my experience, a lot easier with some of the hybrid tools, the way they're developing and becoming easier to use. They're becoming a viable alternative for anyone who wants to get into app development as a kind of starting block.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. There are 3 courses that I teach where we do mobile development, and one is a JavaScript course where we did hybrid development, and then there's an iOS development course and an Android development course. And the students that start out in the hybrid development course have a much easier time transitioning over into the other two. One thing that I have seen with people that are new to programming is when they approach a new language, if they haven't done this several times, to them they approach it like it's completely foreign. There's nothing that I can bring with me from my previous experience that'll help me with this one. I have to just start all over. And that is not true. Just as being a native English speaker and going to learn Swedish, I was able to bring a whole bunch of knowledge with me to make learning Swedish easier. If I have JavaScript or Ruby or Erlang or whatever the language may be, and I'm moving into another language, it makes it much, much easier. And the more languages that I'm exposed to, the easier it is to pick things up. I served as an LDS missionary in Sweden for 18 months. And got to live there and be with those people and just loved every minute of it. Loved being there. Loved the language, loved the people. It was great.
Let's kind of take it to today, and you've got a lot of stuff going on. You mentioned that you had a website, an app development company. What's most exciting you today with all the projects that you've got going on? What's really something you'd like to share with the audience?
I'm just beginning a new project, and so that the new ones are always the most exciting ones. I mean, I've got several libraries out there to make things easier for people, but I've got this new project I've got started up, and what I'm going to be doing is writing a simulator to execute on the iPad that will simulate clusters and allow me to design the interactions between the nodes in the computational clusters. Because I realized after thinking about clusters and cloud and that sort of thing, you really can't design the interactions between the nodes because they're such complex systems. You'll get behavior that is unpredictable, and so that being able to write a simulation before I actually of the software, before I write the software, should allow me to create some clustering software that is highly intelligent and really easy to use. Most people aren't going to find that very interesting, but that kind of harkens back to what I did originally when I came into the industry. So it's kind of fun there.
Oh, great! Well, you mentioned that you had a library there. We can look for that. So I'll include that on the show notes so that people can link to all those things that you're referencing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things I tell people when I'm interacting with them about their application designs is that as developers and engineers, we tend to fall into a trap. And the trap we fall into assuming we're not doing a game, is I've got all this great data, and I'm gathering all this great data. How can I help the user see this data? And that is absolutely the wrong approach to take to creating an app. You're going to create something that is not fun to use. And on a mobile space, in a mobile space, your app has to be fun to use. If there's not some funitude in it, it's going to get deleted right away. And
funitude, I'm writing that word down now. Is that a Swedish word?
No, it's just an English word I made up. It's like attitude, but fun.
I like it. You don't mind if I use that again?
No, go ahead.
Funitude, I love that. That's great.
And so I usually tell them, what is it that you see most people wanting an app to do? And a lot of times, and again, assuming we're not talking about games, they want an advisor. They don't want an information lister. I mean, they can get that anywhere. They want an intelligent advisor, something that will go through all of that data and say, hey, this sounds like it's probably what you're interested in seeing. You can still get to everything, but this is probably what you would want to see. And I'm working with that right now. Actually, the school's newspaper, I'm trying to get them convinced that instead of just showing a list of articles, well, what has this person been interested before? Maybe we should highlight things that they're actually interested in.
Well, that's great, and that's clearly good, sensible advice. Google seems to be going very much down that line with Google Now, trying to almost use technology to predict what you want rather than just serving up on a plate a load of information, but be very useful. And that's clearly excellent advice to anyone out there. Funitude, I've written that down. So as we're kind of drawing to a close, I'd like to ask just some quick fire questions, just so that we can get into the last quick fire round. And if you're up for that, have you got a few more minutes to ask some quick fire questions?
Sure.
Great. So what's the best advice you've ever received?
The best advice I've ever received is be yourself, do what you want to do, take risk. That's the only way to be happy.
I listen to a lot of other podcasts, and one of the consistent themes throughout is be authentically yourself, and it's wonderful that you've almost reinforced that. What can you share with us, or maybe one of your personal habits as a teacher of app development? A habit that it's good for a coder or an app developer to get into.
Self-reliance. Not independence. There is no such thing as independence. We can't be independent. We're always dependent on others. But we can certainly be self-reliant. So instead of constantly, maybe you've got some sort of peer, teammate, lead in a team or in a community or something, use them wisely. Don't blast them with every question. Make sure that you've gone out and done some investigation yourself before you ask the question, so you can ask an intelligent question and get a great answer.
If I was to say, if there was a book you recommend, I would I'd certainly recommend to the audience the two books, Developing Hybrid Applications for the iPhone and Oracle Database Ajax PHP Web Application Development. So I've said it for you, so you don't need to get embarrassed. But if there's another book, perhaps, that you'd recommend to us, what would that be?
I'm going to diverge there and say none, not even my own. The problem that most technical books have is they get out of date so fast. 6 months after a book is published, it's out of date. There's a new version of the SDK. There's all kinds of things. And so I usually tend to try to point people to web searches and the underlying SDK. Certainly both of my books that I wrote are out of date. If you were to look at the current code in QC Native, both for the PHP and for the Objective-C and JavaScript that are in those books, you'd find it's significantly out of date. Having been an author, I would also say, publishers usually make you write a book they want rather than the one you think is the right one to write. And so when you buy a tech book, just be aware of that. It might not be what the author intended.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for the honesty there. And things are hopefully changing with companies like Amazon, where perhaps they're building up a potential audience for the author to write another version of the book. There's more of a pull from the consumers and the book readers rather than perhaps the publishers, as they're losing their power. Given
right. That's the plan I have in the future is to go fully digital so that I can put versions up.
Yeah, and you can actually change them as the SDKs change. Well, Lee, before we say goodbye, the final thing is, if there's anything you feel that you'd like to share with the audience one last time, that would be great. And also how, if anyone does want to, reach out to you, perhaps the best way of learning about you and connecting with you.
Last bit of advice. If you want to write or create, I should say, if you want to create a successful mobile application, you've got to think outside the box. If you've seen it before, it's already been done, and you just don't want to go there. You need to think outside the box. If you've been developing for the web or if you've been developing for the desktop, you really need to think outside the box on your user interface design. Don't be moving from page to page to page. Mobile users really don't like that. Have to come up with something else. What was the second question?
And how do we reach out to you? That's the best way of connecting with you.
LinkedIn's a good way. If you contact me via email, that would be barney.cit@gmail.com. That's a good way to get in touch with me.
Great. Well, yeah. I'll put those on the show notes as well. And Lee, it just sort of, I've really enjoyed this discussion. I'm thrilled that you've joined us. There's certainly some really wonderful words of wisdom to take away from this. And thanks for sharing your story. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Paul.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Stay tuned for the next episode, and if you do have any ideas on who we should interview, please send that email to info@onemob.com. That's info@onemob.com. It's always a challenge trying to get guests, so your help will be much appreciated.